Hi there, older travelers, and it's time for another exciting video. Boy, do we have a good one for you today. Do you realize that about 663,000 American tourists will visit Australia this year? Yeah, why do I care? Well, Tanya and I are getting ready to take another trip, and we're on our way to Australia in about another week. But we are going to do it a little bit different way. We are going to take a cruise ship to Australia. Well, who does that? Why would you think you would ever want to do that? Well, let me tell you, out of that 663,000 Americans who will go to Australia this year, approximately 217,000 of them will go on a cruise ship. That's about a third of them. I am very surprised. I didn't know that was the case. But in today's video, we're going to go walk you through the process that we went through to decide how we were going to get to Australia. We knew we wanted to go to Australia in this Northern Hemisphere winter time because it's cold, and we know that we have a friend who lives in Sydney, and she invited us to come visit, and we said, when's the best time? And she told us, so that's what we were going to do. So we started looking at the different ways that you can get to Australia from Knoxville, Tennessee. Well, okay, the natural way that you would think that you would go is to fly. If you fly from Knoxville to Sydney, obviously there's no direct flights, but there's a one-stop flight. You fly from here to Houston. That's the best way to go on United. And in January, the roughly best price you can get on economy is a little over $1,400 per person. The flight time, including from Knoxville to Houston, takes a little over 22 hours. So you figure, well, that's pretty fast. I mean, I can get there in a reasonable amount of time. But if you start to think about, well, what if we take a cruise ship? Wow, what a novel concept. Well, we found a cruise ship that was going from Fort Lauderdale to Sydney. It takes 37 days. Well, okay, there's a little bit of a time difference there. So if you were going to decide, should we fly to Australia? Should we take a cruise to Australia? Well, a lot of it depends on how much time you have. If you only have a few weeks and you're not retired, well, then you're probably going to fly. But if you're like us and we have more time than money, then cruising is the way to do that. So we're going to take this cruise ship. Let me tell you a little bit about it. If you put together the amount of money that it costs for us to go on this 37-day cruise from Fort Lauderdale to Sydney, actually also including that flight cost from Knoxville to Fort Lauderdale, if you put those together, that ends up a total of about $15,224 for the two of us. Now you think, wow, that's a ton of money. $15,000 for the two of us versus the $2,800 or roughly $3,000 that would take for the two of us to fly to Australia. That's a huge difference. Why would we ever want to do that? Well, let me tell you why. And it actually ends up being a better deal financially to take a ship to Australia than it is to fly there. Here's the deal. If you figure that if you were going to spend 37 days in Sydney, the same amount of time that you are going to take to get to Sydney being on a cruise ship, so you fly to Sydney, you stay there for 37 days. What would that cost you? Well, the average cost for one person per day in Sydney is $303 per day, or a little over $600 per day per couple. Well, you say to yourself, well, Jay, that doesn't seem kind of logical either, because if I'm going all the way to Australia, I'm not going to spend my whole time in Sydney. Probably not. And there are cheaper places in Australia to stay than in Sydney. You can go to Adelaide, Melbourne, Darwin, Perth, you've got all sorts of places to go to that will probably be less than that $303 a day per person that you would be in Sydney. But you got to, it takes, Australia is a huge place. And so you got to figure out the cost of getting from place to place and so on. So if you figure that $15,224 for the two of us for the cruise, and you put in together a hotel night in Fort Lauderdale ahead of time, and Uber rides to the hotel and back and forth. Okay, so you're going to end up paying about per person per day $216 by taking a cruise. So $216 a day versus $303. So your comparison is essentially $216 a day if you're going to take per person, if you're going to take a cruise, versus $303 per day per person if you're going to fly there. Okay, so from that standpoint, cruising is really a better deal. Now let's look at some of the other things. Okay, so there's the cost and we know the time. Probably the most important thing, especially for older travelers, is the experience. What kind of an experience are you going to get out of this? Well, I don't know about you, but if I spend 20 or 22 hours on an airplane, eating airline food, being in an economy seat, even if you go business class, it's going to cost more than this, and it'll be more comfortable. But just for our purposes here, an economy seat, to me, that is not a peak experience. And by the time you get to Sydney, after that, you've gone through so many time zones, plus the date line, you're going to be messed up for the first few days after that anyway. So let's just look at the cruise experience. For 37 days, you're going to be eating, for the most part, gourmet meals. People are going to be nice to you. I mean, they're going to change your towels every day. They're going to make your bed. They're going to say, "Oh, Mr. J, Miss Tanya, how are you doing today? What are you going to do? Oh, it's so nice to see you." Versus the airplane experience where, sit down and shut up. And, you want a pillow? Well, maybe there's one up above. I'm exaggerating, but, we all know that flying on an airplane isn't, it's not, it's an I don't want to say ordeal, but it's just something you need to go through. Whereas the cruise thing, it's an experience. Plus, you're going to meet interesting people. Plus, you've got entertainment. You can go to the spa. You've got whirlpools and a swimming pool and this and that. And I don't know. To me, that's, and you're staying in a nice hotel room. Your cruise cabin. I mean, that's the best. But probably one of the things that really sways it for Tanya and I is destinations. Okay, well, if you compare destinations, how many destinations are you going to if you're going on a flight versus a cruise? Well, if you're flying, there are no destinations. You're going from Knoxville to Houston to Sydney, or from wherever else in the United States that you're coming from, or anywhere else in the world for that matter. How many destinations are we going to go to on that 37-day cruise? We're going to go to 12 of them. And 7 of them, Tanya and I have never been to before. So if you figured the cost that it would take us to go to those destinations on our own, flying there, staying in hotels there, whatever we would be doing, I mean, it would make it, it would be really expensive. I haven't figured it all out, but it would be really expensive. So here, for example, here are some of the places that we're going to go to. We're going to go to the Cayman Islands. Been there before, but interesting. We're going to go to Costa Rica, Puerto Limon, Costa Rica. We can go look at birds, look at the jungle. Manta, Ecuador. Last time Tanya and I were there, we got a couple of Panama hats made. It was a riot. Lima, Peru. Very interesting place. And then Easter Island. We're going to spend 2 days in Easter Island, a place I've always wanted to go to. Can't do that on an airplane. There are 3 different places in French Polynesia that we're going to visit. Never been there. We're going to go to the Cook Islands. That's another one that's been on my bucket list, is to go to the Cook Islands. We're going to go to Tonga. Tonga. Another place I've always wanted to go to is Tonga. And then finally, New Caledonia. Noumea, New Caledonia. Those are places that, I mean, it's worth it, even if it costs more money than comparing to flying. That'd be worth the trip right there. So it's kind of up to you, whatever you want to do. If the main idea is just getting to a place, and then, by all means, take a flight and grin and bear it and pay whatever it's going to cost to get there. And then when you get there, have yourself a great time. When we get to Australia, we're going to do a lot of other stuff too in Australia. But we're just talking about the idea of getting there. It's kind of up to you, what is more important to you. So I'm not going to make your decision for you. Obviously, we made our decision. It's going to be much, much more relaxing. We're going to have all these great experiences, and we can't wait to tell you guys about them. Hopefully it'll be interesting and give you an idea what you can expect if you take a trip like this. So we'll see you again in our next video. Thank you very much for watching. Have a wonderful New Year's and 2025. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.